Katie from What Katie Did, and welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about seamed hosiery, whether it's seam tights or seam stockings, and the importance they play when recreating a vintage look. We're in the run-up to festival season here at What Katie Did, and the biggest event of the year for us, the Goodwood Revival, is on the horizon. The Goodwood Revival takes place once a year in Sussex in England, and Goodwood was originally a motor racing circuit which ran from the mid-40s to the mid-60s, and 20 years ago now, it must be nearly 20 years, they recreated the event, and it combines vintage motor racing with vintage fashion and all kinds of other vintage things based from the period from the 40s to the 60s, which is obviously perfect for us. So you might have noticed in our photo shoots that frequently we use vintage cars. We're not, What Katie Did isn't just about the lingerie for us, it is a whole lifestyle choice. And if you visit our house is very much 40s and 50s, and the cars we drive are 40s and 50s. We have the girls who work here, some of them drive vintage cars as well. So it's the Vintage Revival. To go there is an amazing experience, and it's the only place, and I've said this to people before, that we work 12 hours a day and it feels like we're on vacation because we have so much fun. If you are going to a vintage event, you have to remember that back in the 1940s and 1950s, all hosiery had seams, and all hosiery would have been stockings. So the easiest way to get a vintage look or add a vintage touch to your outfit is to add a pair of vintage seams, whether that be stockings or, dare we say, tights. And we do a small range of vintage tights, and I have to tell you, this is simply because of the Goodwood Revival. We started having a pop-up boutique at the Goodwood Revival many, many years ago, and we used to have so many people come up to us and ask for seam tights, and we kept on saying, oh, we don't sell them because they're not period correct. And over the years, we just got so fed up saying this, so that in the end we did actually make seam tights. So if you're a fan of our seam tights, then you've got the people who go to Goodwood Revival to thank for that. If you are going to a 1940s or 1950s event and want to look like the real deal, then you would need to wear seams. And if you're going for a day wear look and want to be totally authentic, you are looking at a neutral seam, by which I mean either a champagne with a nude seam, or champagne with a coffee seam, or champagne with a black seam. You wouldn't have worn a brightly coloured seam so much back in the day, although they were actually made, they were very, very rare. If you want to wear a sheer black stocking, they tended to be kept for evening wear. So if you are going for a day wear look, you could get away, if you're wearing a darker colour, you could get away with a brown colour, but it would be some kind of skin tone. For the Goodwood Revival, our most popular style we sell are the champagne with black seam. I mean, we sell more of those than any others, and we have great fun walking around the event, and picking out our seams is great fun. You have to remember, though, that we don't actually live back in the 1950s, and when you go to events such as the Goodwood Revival, it is very much a twist on the 1950s. As my dad says, when he went to Goodwood back in the day, you were lucky to get a cup of tea and a hot dog, and now everyone's drinking champagne. So when I get people come up to me at the event and say, is it period correct to wear green seam stockings? It's quite tricky to answer. I can remember getting quite frustrated with some customer last year who she wasn't even wearing a vintage inspired dress. She was wearing a modern dress, and she was like, oh, I can't wear any of these seam stockings because they're not period correct. And I'm like, well, the whole of Goodwood, the fact that we live in 2019, is it isn't period correct. And you have to remember that if we want to be period correct, we're going back to, well, being a woman, we weren't financially independent in the 1950s. The Equal Pay Act hadn't come into effect. We couldn't have got a mortgage, a loan, or credit cards without our husbands or fathers signing it off. Up until very recently, in the UK, up until 15 years ago, we even shared a husband's tax code, which is crazy. And in addition, for women, birth control was for married women only, and this was also pre-abortion. Also, if you were gay, being gay was illegal, and also there was, I mean, I know we talk about racism now, but going back to the 50s, there was a lot more open racism than there is today. So I mean, when people talk about whether you should be wearing a coloured seam stocking, I mean, if you're going, there are a lot more important things to worry about than whether a seam stocking is period correct or not. We don't want to go back to, you know, 50s values at all. When I talk about neutral seam stockings being worn for day wear in the 40s and 50s, this very much was confined to the 40s and 50s. When you look at earlier periods of time, I mean, in the Victorian era, people wore black stockings, but they weren't just plain black. They would have had amazing, well, if you were of a certain social status and then had the finances, they had amazing embroidery on them, and moving through to the 20s and 30s, they were made in different colours. I've done a video on green seam stockings where I've shown you a pair of 1930s silk green stockings. And so it was only in the 1940s that things got rather plain and utilitarian. I have got a pair of pink, these date from the 50s, pink fully fashioned stockings. So yes, they did exist. So if anyone does say to you, did they exist in the 50s? Yes, here's the proof, they most certainly did. And once we got into the 1960s and tights were developed, then suddenly there were legs of all colours around the streets of London. It was, you know, everything went crazy. So when we talk about nude seam stockings, we are just looking at a very, very narrow period of time when other seamed colours were available and other stocking colours were available. It's just that they were very rare, and a lot of the images are black and whites we see today. So we don't really think of seamed colours being available at that time. Over the last few years at What Katie Did, we've had great fun developing a range of contrast seamed colours of stockings, and we've got over 20 different colours now of seam stocking. It's the stockings we concentrate on because they're the biggest seller for us. So we have a lot more choice in the stockings than we do with the tights. And you have to remember with our stockings is you do need a suspender or garter belt to hold them up. They won't stay up on their own. And again, you do have, although we have a smaller range of tights than we do stockings, you do have the people of Goodwood to thank for that. Otherwise, you wouldn't have any tights at all. So whether you choose to wear stockings or tights, we've got a nice range for you to choose from, and it's great fun to accessorise your seam stockings or seam tights to your outfit and add a bit of contrast and colour to it. If you are going to Goodwood or another vintage event, especially in a vintage car, you'll be very short on trunk or boot space. So check out our video on how to style a navy blue dress 6 ways. It shows you how to transform the dress into several different outfits simply by changing the jewellery, possibly the top, and of course your seam stockings. So if you are stuck for ideas for a vintage event or Goodwood, then please check that out for inspiration. And if you do have any ideas, please let me know, especially on our Instagram channel at What Katie Did UK, hashtag us, and we'd love to see what you come up with. If you are going to Goodwood this year, please drop by and say hello to us. We've got 2 pop-up boutiques this year. We've got one in the centre of the track where we've been for several years now. We won't have Maisie Dog with us, but I'll be there and my husband will be there, and you'll be able to meet members of our team. And we're also having a second stand this year, which is they're developed a special clothing trading area, which is where, if you were there last year, it's where the fashion show was held, where this year it's going to be devoted to vintage and vintage-inspired clothing, and we'll be in there this year as well. So please come by and say hi, and if you get a run in your nylons, we'll be there to help. If you have any questions in the meantime, please let me know, and I'll catch up with you soon, so take care.